Not sure if you all have seen this video, and I'm doing this live, so bear with me with the technology, but it's gotten almost 3 million views, and I'm going to play it for you in a second. I just want to make sure that my ROKFIN live stream has started. If you're not signed up over on Locals or ROKFIN and you're watching this on YouTube, definitely go over and do that, because a lot of times I have to kill the streams on YouTube to avoid the community guideline policies. But today I think we're safe. So let me play this real fast. The headline here, this is from Breaking 911 on Twitter, but it's all over the place. If you look for the liberal world order, you can't miss it. The guy on CNN asks the Biden advisor, Brian Deese, what do you say to those families that say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years? And, well, I'll let you hear his response. It's likely you've already heard all this. Let me know if you can't hear it, okay? Here we go.
What do you say to those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years? This is just not sustainable.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
Sustainable. What do you say?
Let's just watch that again, okay?
Listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
Okay, so that's the stakes. The stakes are the liberal world order. So it's interesting because the same day that this came out, we were also seeing something else that's interesting that I don't know if this goes along with the liberal world order, but if this is what they mean, I don't know if this bodes well for us. White House press corps demands end to Biden event restrictions. And what happened is that the journalists, not all of them, but a lot of journalists from the White House press corps, well, I guess it's technically the White House Correspondents Association, sent a letter to Karine Jean-Pierre, the new press secretary, saying that they're fed up with the Biden administration essentially selecting who gets to go to press conferences. And I'll just read you. Well, we could read the whole letter. Why not? This comes from the Post, but you could read this for yourself, the whole thing. And they're saying, we once again, so obviously they've already requested this. We once again respectfully request the Biden administration, without exception, reopen all the traditional venues for presidential remarks at the White House, including the East Room and the South Court Auditorium for any reporter admitted to the White House campus. So these are bigger, from what I understand, these are bigger venues than where they've been having smaller sized press conferences. And they're saying they want that to be open and for any reporter admitted to the White House campus. The current method of allowing a limited number of reporters into these events is not only restrictive and antithetical to the concept of a free press, but it has been done without any transparent process into how reporters are selected to cover these events. We are all left wondering who is making these decisions and what are the criteria on which they are based. Then they go on to say, basically, they appreciate the fact that COVID forced kind of the slimming down of who was allowed to go to these press briefings with the president. But basically everything's changed over the last year, except for the fact that there's still restrictions on who gets to get into these press briefings with President Biden. And there's, well, they call it incongruity of restrictions. It underscores a belief by many reporters that the administration seeks to limit access to the president by anyone outside of the pool or anyone who might ask a question the administration does not want to answer. Let us be candid. Our job is not to be liked, nor is it to be concerned about whether or not you like what we ask. A reporter's ability to question the most powerful man in our government shouldn't be discretionary. The administration's continued efforts to limit access to the president cannot be defended. Any notion that space is limited is not supported by the fact that every other president before Biden, including Trump, allowed full access to the very same spaces without making us fill out a request form prior to admittance. Thank you for your attention to these ahistorical problems. We ask you to see to it that protocols are changed back to the access norms of which we are accustomed. And also in this letter, they essentially say that for any reporter not in the pool that covers the president, meaning not in the pool of folks that actually go with the president traveling somewhere, the people that are just allowed to go onto the campus of the White House, that open press remarks represent the only time most of the reporters who cover the president might be positioned to ask him a question or interact with him at all. And basically, they don't know why some are getting in and some are not allowed in. And have made mention in this article that there have been all kinds of excuses made, and most of them have been have been found to be wanting. It wasn't about who has a bigger audience or who filed first. Like one of the excuses, I guess, that was cited in the New York Post was, well, these people just asked to come to the press conference first, and so first come, first serve. And then reporters started talking and they found out that that's not true, that people who had put in their request after were still getting in. How are they making these decisions? They're not getting a clear answer. So anyway, so it's just interesting to me that as I played for you earlier, and you know what, why don't I just go back to that for a second and we'll just watch again how we are told that we have to deal with these insane gas prices because of the liberal world order. It's just the liberal world order. I mean, it's just saving liberalism, like, openness and peace and prosperity and freedom. That's why we're just in a fight for freedom. We just have to have high gas prices. At the same time, we have slimmed down the people allowed to go to the presidential press conferences to who we like or what. I mean, nobody knows. But there's just such doublespeak. So let's just play this one more time.
Those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
Okay, yeah, it's just so it's like it's sold as if we are this bastion, not just the administration, but the country itself is just this bastion of, again, like this order of freedom. And, I was like, what is this liberal world order? And I know maybe a lot of you are like, duh, it's something everybody talks about post World War II, but it wasn't something that I necessarily knew about. So I looked it up. What is the liberal world order? And I just wanted to know if it's consistent with not allowing reporters into press conferences to ask the president questions. This comes from the website set up for the Council on Foreign Relations. And it says, what is the liberal world order? Explore the organizations and agreements that have promoted global peace and prosperity for 75 years, as well as the challenges that now threaten to undermine those gains, which could be journalism. I'm not sure. So it says, after World War II, the deadliest conflict in human history, countries sought to ensure the world never devolved into such horrific violence. World leaders created a series of international organizations and agreements to promote global cooperation on issues including security, trade, health, and monetary policy. The United States has championed this system, known as the liberal world order, for the past 75 years. During this time, the world has enjoyed unprecedented peace and prosperity. But these institutions are far from perfect, and today they are struggling to address new sources of disorder, such as climate change and a deadly pandemic. What's more, democracy is on the decline around the world. Authoritarianism is on the rise, and countries like China are deliberately chipping away at the liberal world order, creating parallel institutions of their own. Faced with these challenges, will the liberal world order survive? If a new system emerges, what will that mean for freedom, peace, and prosperity worldwide? Okay, so that's your intro into the liberal world order. Now, going back to the White House press corps demanding an end to the Biden event restrictions, which I don't know, they mention rise of control and authoritarianism as a problem for the new world, or sorry, not the new world order, the liberal world order. That's what they call it, though lots of people might say it's also the new world order. I was remembering this video that I did because I'm thinking this is not the first time I've heard White House correspondents complain about getting access to the president in this administration. I remember, something else. So I'm racking my brain, and it hits me. Oh yeah, I actually did a video about this on May 19th, 2021. So let me just show you that, just a quick clip of that, because This I had called Reporters Complain White House Demands Quote Approval. So there's a story that came out that reporters were mad that essentially if they wanted to quote the Biden administration, they had to submit the quote in. If they wanted to put the name on there, they had to submit the quote and then get it approved. And so anyway, I did a video about it. So let's just take a quick. This is back when I used to actually like curl my hair and everything when I would go. So let's start and read the first couple graphs here. If you've read a quote from an administration official in a newspaper or a wire story recently, there's a good chance that the White House communications team had an opportunity to edit it first. Of course, I'm going to have to watch commercials on my own channel. Let's just get through this. Here we go. That's because the Biden White House frequently demands that interviews with administration officials be conducted on grounds known colloquially as background with quote approval, according to 5 reporters who cover the White House for outlets other than Politico. In practice, that means the information from an interview can be used in the story, but in order for the person's name to be attached to the quote, the reporter must transcribe the quotes they want and then send them to the communications team to approve, veto, or edit them. West Wing playbook must make a confession here. We have participated in such arrangements too. The other week, the White House asked for background with quote approval for an interview with White House Communications Director Kate Bedingfield for a profile about speechwriter Vinay Reddy. Close to deadline, and with our editors giving us side-eye about filing late, we agreed. Now, I'm going to get into my commentary after we read through a little bit more of this, but I'll just stop here for a quick second and say many times on this channel I have... Okay, blah, blah, blah. Basically what I say here is that they're making excuses essentially that we just played ball because we had to. We didn't want our competitors to beat us, and we didn't want to miss out on the opportunity to have these quotes in our stories, so we just did it. And then we're basically complaining now that it got out of control. And I guess big picture when it comes to, and I'll play just another quick second of this, when it comes to what I'm seeing with these complaints, because I've said before that I think press conferences are, they're like D-list journalism. I hate to say this because I'm not trying to be mean to the people who have the press pass and they get to go to the White House and everything, but it's just a theater where you go and you ask questions and then there are staged responses. It's not a place where you're going to go get some kind of response to a FOIA, federal, Freedom of Information Act request where you're going to actually get emails or transcripts of text messages or anything like that that's going to really expose people. You all know that not only did I work for a TV station in corporate news, but I also used to work for the government. I know how press conferences work. They're totally staged theater. So on one hand, while I'm pushing back on the idea, like I agree with the correspondents that this whole weirdness of like being hand selected to be a reporter that gets to go to the press conferences, I agree that they should be pushing back on that. I also don't necessarily share the ire that it's the end of the world for journalism, because I just don't have that high of a regard for press conferences, because I just think that they're political theater. And for the reporters, I mean, hey, maybe that's your only chance to ask the question, but you are highly likely not going to get the truth. I mean, it's highly unlikely you'll get the truth at a press conference because it's all manicured. They can say whatever they want. So, all right, let's hopefully I got it queued up to the part where I say something interesting. Let's keep going. Reality, it is a choice. And I've said before on the channel that I made those choices. Originally, I would complain, I don't have enough time. I don't understand the material. Oh, well, I'm just gonna do it. And eventually that led to the end of my career. I couldn't continue doing that. That's why eventually I decided to leave. Besides the fact that I wanted to live on 20 acres in the middle of nowhere, that helped the decision. But that was definitely a huge part of it, that I could no longer look at myself in the mirror and say that time, resources was enough of an excuse to just be putting stuff out there that I really wasn't totally sure I understood. So let's read just a little bit more and then we'll get into some more commentary, okay? The practice allows the White House an extra measure of control as it tries to craft press coverage. At its best, quote approval allows sources to speak more candidly about their work. At its worst, it gives public officials a way to obfuscate or screen their admissions and words. The Biden White House isn't the first to employ the practice. Many reporters say it's reminiscent of the tightly controlled Obama White House. The Trump White House used it too. But reporters say Trump's team did so less frequently than Biden's team, which also used the tactic during the campaign. And a number of current White House reporters have become increasingly frustrated by what they see as its abuse. The rule treats them like coddled Capitol Hill pages, and that's not who they are or the protections they deserve. Every reporter I work with has encountered the same practice, said another. But, as is often the case with the unwieldy White House press corps, there is a collective action problem. Reporters are reluctant to say no to using background with quote approval because it could put them at a disadvantage with their competitors. Quote, the only way the press has the power to push back against this is if we all band together, said the first reporter. At least one White House reporting team has been talking internally about reaching out to other outlets to push the Biden team to stop the practice. Quote, have any reporters talked about mutinying? The second reporter asked. Quote, if you start fomenting an insurrection, keep me updated. They bring up this issue.
Okay,
and they never do. There was no White House press corps insurrection, and so what happened? It got worse. So that was a year ago before they say that the COVID restrictions were softened for the White House press corps and for these press conferences. And they were mad that they were having to do quote approval, but they were still doing it. They were still obliging, but they were just mad. So they wrote about it. And then it escalates to now the White House is deciding who can even be here. So first we're deciding, like, can you even put this quote in your story? I mean, it's a virtual thing. You call us on the phone, you ask us for a quote. We need to read it and give approval before we're willing to do that. You have to agree to that. And they do. And then what happens? It turns into this, where they're now complaining about how they have restrictions on who gets to go to the press conferences, and they don't know why. They don't know who gets picked for what reason. And the White House is being really effusive about that. Is that the right word? They're obfuscating the truth. They're obfuscating it, right? And just being very obscure. Lots of O words. So it's just interesting how we get to this point. And I think, like, going back to this idea, that that we, I think, had this illusion, again, as I started the video showing the Biden advisor talking about how gas prices are just something we just have to suck up and deal with, because we are literally facing the end of freedom. The end of freedom is at stake. and then at the same time, like, we have a free press, and we talk about Russia as this authoritarian press, and they can't ever say anything true, but we can really hold people accountable here, but we can't get to the meetings. We can't get to the press conferences. It's just interesting. And then I also think it's interesting how as journalists, and I'm saying, like, listen, as I said in that video, like, I participated in the system too for a long time before I started realizing what was going on, and just accepted these quotes from press releases and press conferences and all that stuff. And just, I don't know, it's just the way that things worked. And then when you start to wake up to the system, you're like, I just can't participate in this anymore. But that kind of stuff's happening all the time. I mean, reporters are constantly being tapped, whether it's like as obvious as you get to go to the press conference or not. There are certain quotes manicured in press releases, or certain people that they're willing to call back. And so this is just an escalation of a prior issue, and something that happens all the time, I think, every day in sort of the legacy corporate press. So just curious what you all think. I'll go look at some of the chats now, but I thought that was interesting. And you know what, before I go and read the chats, I gotta give my shout outs to the sponsors. Is there a wine world order? Is there a world order that includes drinking wine? Because if so, you need AllisonWinePromo.com. There's the Rogue Malbec. You'll never get invited to a White House press conference ever again if you drink it. Maybe you're better off that way. There's the Cowboy Friend Malbec and the nearly 9,000 feet extreme altitude Malbec, 50% off the wine itself and 50% off shipping. So don't forget for the weekend, even though it's probably a little late to have it for July 4th, but just celebrate the liberal world order next weekend. So celebrate July 4th this weekend. And then next weekend, when you get my wine, you can celebrate the liberal world order and then feel like you supported my work too. Or you can go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison and get yourself some high altitude Nicaraguan rose, light rose, dark rose. They are USDA certified organic, and they also have a tea. So if you're a tea drinker, you can get Katura tea. It's tea made out of the coffee fruit. It's also very good. All right. So, okay. One last thing I wanted to bring up before we go, and actually before I read the chats, is I was thinking to myself too, where there would be like hypocrisy on the journalist side of things, not just the White House, because yeah, it's really easy. Sorry, this is a very long article. I'm scrolling all the way to the top. This is one of my favorite articles from 2016. That's right. Right towards election time. And I really need to save it. I'm going to print it out because I'm afraid it's going to eventually get thrown away and taken off the internet. But the reason that I love referencing this article is because first off, it's all about how journalists, like the New York Times anyway, and I do think a lot of journalism outlets and mainstream journalists felt similarly to this. Otherwise, there would have been total shock and outrage that the New York Times would write something like this. But there was this idea that they just had to change the way they were doing journalism to protect the United States from a monster, essentially. And that's what this whole article is about. Trump is testing the norms of objectivity in journalism. And here's how it starts. If you're a working journalist and you believe that Donald J. Trump is a demagogue playing to the nation's worst racist and nationalistic tendencies, that he cozies up to anti-American dictators, and that he would be dangerous with control of the United States nuclear codes, how the heck are you supposed to cover him? Because if you believe all of those things, you have to throw out the textbook American journalism has been using for the better part of the past half century, if not longer, and approach it in a way you've never approached anything in your career. If you view a Trump presidency as something that's potentially dangerous, then your reporting is going to reflect that. You would move closer than you've ever been to being oppositional. That's uncomfortable and uncharted territory for every mainstream non-opinion journalist I've ever known, and by normal standards, untenable. So what you see here is that there is a line that they're basically saying they have to draw, where they have to just do things differently, including just be opinionated and sort of out there. And then we saw that turn into censoring, calls for censoring. So first it was, we just have to do journalism differently and that we have to jockey for a team because we just can't let this team win. Otherwise, it could be the destruction of the entire country and the future of the free world. That turned into, on top of jockeying and having our opinions about it and fighting for a particular team, we now have to silence the opposition. So that in COVID, you saw that sort of turn into journalism from where it was 12, 13 years ago when I got into it, even a little bit longer, where you were seeking out the dissenters and trying to understand the skeptics and the people who are not going along with it, the people who are the whistleblowers who are crying foul. Those people are trying to understand them and seeking it to share their voice so that you were balancing out the mainstream narrative. Then it went from that to finding those people and seeing them as sort of fires that you had to put out. And so you see like the beginning of this in this article. To me, if you're a journalism outlet who's like, sorry, there are desperate times call for desperate measures. And there's just certain times where we just can't be objective. We can't be balanced or fair or whatever they call it. We just have to attack this and just be relentless to show you the truth here. Like I have a hard time seeing how you don't see how that eventually turns into other institutions that act similarly. And I could easily see like the Biden advisor saying, hey, it's just the liberal world order we have to protect. Well, when you have this threat, whatever the threat is, the liberal world order, Russia, COVID, Trump, there's this boogeyman that allows for the institution to make excuses that it just cannot operate as usual. It has to break away from whatever its practices are, medicine, public health policy. We've seen that over the last couple of years, and how many lawsuits already have been won, basically where judges have said this violates the Constitution, but originally they were sold in the name of like, there's just this threat. And so I going back to the article and this letter that the White House Correspondents Association sent to the Biden administration about how they're mad that they're being chosen specifically for the press conferences and they don't know why. Could the Biden administration just say, sorry, we're just protecting the liberal world order here. We just have to do it this way. Desperate times call for desperate measures. And if they do say that kind of thing, like we have to block you from information, if the Biden administration says we have to block you from information for the sake of the public, and not just the sake of the public here in the United States, but the sake of the public all over the free world, whatever that means, then how is that any different than the New York Times saying that they have to do things differently because Trump was testing the norms of objectivity in journalism? To me, it's the same thing. And it's like, if you feel like there's a line in the sand where you have to start acting to shut down information or to jockey in a particular path. And honestly, to me, it's kind of worse when journalists do that, when journalists censor and journalists act this way, because the White House, I guess I just expect the president and politicians to act this way, whereas I have higher standards for journalists. So if I were to go after anybody on that, it would be the journalists. So that I don't know. I think they've helped create each other. We've had journalists who have played the game and journalists who have even led the game. And then they get mad when the politicians, when the government that has supposedly they were supposed to be held accountable by these journalists goes rogue and doesn't, it's like, no, this is too far. We should, that we were going to let you look at our quotes every once in a while. And we were definitely going to go after Trump harder than we go after you. Those were all things that we were fine doing because we don't feel like you're as much as a threat as Trump was, or, okay, we'll play your game with the quotes and everything. But then the administration decides to go just a little bit farther, just take it a little bit farther. And they're like, this is not right. This has got to end. But it's like, but did you see how you helped build this system? A government that has gotten to the point where it doesn't think that it needs to invite you to the press conferences, that you're not covering the people's house. You're not coming in to hold the people's elected officials responsible. You're just here to do what we say. You helped create that system by choosing who you were going to go after and who you were going to leave alone, by allowing the norms of objectivity in journalism to totally fly out the window, and to basically hand over your freedom as a journalist to tell the truth, allegedly, by doing all the things that we've talked about in this video. And so I don't know. One of the things I guess I wish I saw more in the news industry was just a little bit of self-reflection. How did we get here? Instead of just pointing fingers constantly, because it's pretty obvious to me how we got here. Okay, so let me take a few comments from here, and then we're gonna wrap it up. Okay, Lynn, my husband, thank you for sending the super chat. I gotta scroll up to find it. Hang on, I gotta go all the way up. Okay. Buy some wine, people, and make sure to like, share, and subscribe so we can defeat those who are silencing Allison's channel. Yep. We don't know what's going on with my channel, but somebody may have had too much Allison wine promo and they accidentally deleted me from the YouTube lineup. And then somebody else, there was a comment like, here we go. Celebrate the new wine order. Yeah, that's a great idea. The new wine order. Hang on. There was one way at the beginning when you were talking about totally reformatting the whole thing. The NWO is on the line. Help us. All we need is for you to eat some bugs. True. Biden and staff work together, but they don't communicate well. Therefore, they need to stop. It does seem like they don't communicate very well. Like it's not the Obama administration seemed like a very well-oiled machine. But when you hear his old press director, his old communications director talk, like Bill and I did this tittle tattle about it. I think I put a clip online about how just that guy's, I live in a totally different plane of existence, like reality from that guy. And so on some level, like I would prefer, if it's in fact the case, like if you're saying that right now we're just seeing bad communication and bumbling idiots or whatever, I would prefer that. Because like listening to some of the Biden or the Obama press folks talk about the lockdown on information during that administration, it kind of freaks you out. So I take this over that. Reporters are freshly educated and in need of money. That's true. Well, reporters don't want to get beat by their competition. So that's part of the reason why they play the game. It's all about getting the story out when your competitors are and not missing a quote. And there is so much pressure to deliver. And so they would rather lose their freedom than lose in ratings. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's like if you hand over the right to do quote approval, which when I was in the business, I remember having an organization, it was an environmental organization. And like, we won't do this with you unless we could see the story ahead of time. And my boss was like, no way. We don't do that. We don't do it. Now, granted, it's the same boss who also censored me on a couple other topics we won't discuss today. But but in that particular case, it's like you don't just hand over your story and let people just like say, okay, yes, you can run it or not. I know that happens at other places, but at least on that particular day with that thing, we didn't do that. So, but if you do start doing that over time, like at the higher level you get up, it's like this thing where they're just too cozy. It could be even that too. It's not even like you have to force them to get the quote approval or to do what you say. It's they want to. This silly White House Correspondents' Dinner that happens all the time, is that still happening? I never see it anymore, so I'm not even sure it's still a thing. But remember when everybody was so upset that Trump wasn't going to go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, or something happened with that, right? Everybody's freaking out. Why do we have that? Why are these people going to a dinner and drinking and eating together? That's never made any sense to me either. I think that's totally weird. So it's like there's this kind of cozy relationship where now they're like, well, we've been going to the Correspondents' Dinner. We drink with you guys once a year. We're really nice. We rub elbows after the press conferences. We even let you approve our quotes. And now you're not letting us into the press conferences. Like, what are you thinking? Well, how do you think we got here? I mean, it's like you were self-castrated. I mean, in my opinion, it's like, you didn't fight when you could have made a difference, and now we're just down the chute. Okay, this is the one I was looking for. You cannot fundamentally transform something without destroying it first. Biden and Democrats are sabotaging the country from within, and the media are complicit. I think this has been building for a long time. I think you could easily go back to the Bush administration and see the precedent for all of this. I think a lot of conservatives anyway were not paying attention back then. I think they are starting to pay attention to the lockdown on speech and freedoms that probably should have been more of concern, decades ago. And now, I think they could probably look at themselves in the mirror a little bit and say, okay, did we lay the foundation for where we are now? I think that would be a fair point of self-reflection. Okay. Scrolling back, I know lots of people, here we go. NATO needs a reason to exist. Russia is a scapegoat. It's been pushing towards Russia for years. Well, okay, their tube is not a safe space. That's true. Corn Pop is a first-time viewer. Really? I feel like a Corn Pop. I used to have a Corn Pop that followed all the time. Are you sure you're new? Is this a safe space? I get chat banned a lot for being honest. I don't ban people, but YouTube does sometimes. So just be aware that happens. Liberals standing firm, oxymoron. The word liberal does not seem to mean what it used to mean anymore. I'll just say that. Like, I used to be called, my boss used to call me a right-wing liberal. I didn't really ever understand what that meant. I mean, I was a fierce advocate, obviously, of freedom from government overreach, but like I cared about the environment, and that totally freaked people out. They couldn't understand how there was somebody who could like live in both worlds. So anyway, I just think big picture, the whole point of my live stream is to just say that, okay, obviously we're talking about this liberal world order now that's trending on Twitter. The video has been seen 3 million times. It literally was just posted, a day ago. And then at the same time, and maybe this is not coincidental. I don't know. You tell me. The same day that's released, the White House Press Association or the White House Correspondents Association has this letter that comes out that is calling out the Biden administration for not letting people into the press conferences and not saying why, and just basically self-selecting. And of course, the the nuance to it is that you're doing it so that you can keep people who would be adversarial to the administration out, and also because Biden is just terrible live. Okay. Hello from California. Great content. Thank you. Hello from the state where we easily came together to recall our governor. Bummer what happens when we, and then it's not finished. Okay, keep finishing and I'll read it. It's what other people think it means, not what it should be by definition. We're talking about liberal. Do you understand what right-wing liberal means now? The terminology has changed to be more specific. I don't know what that means now. I honestly do not know. When people ask me, because I get people on who are from, the left, the right. I don't even know what that means anymore, even left or right, but they would like self-identify that way. And they'll talk about like the other side. I know, because I've paid very close attention to the comments on my channel. I know I have people that span the political spectrum, but I would say all of them, very few of them are sort of pro current power structure, current, like the powers that be, that are people who I guess feel disenfranchised by the institutional power structure right now. And I just don't think that definitely not the two-party system, but I don't even know if the left-right dichotomy even works anymore. I mean, I think it probably doesn't. It just definitely Republican Democrat doesn't. I don't even, it's just very confusing time, because the old constructs, which maybe they never made much sense, but they certainly don't make any sense anymore. And I think it'll be interesting to see people, who normally maybe would have been played to be adversarial towards each other, are now starting to realize that maybe they had more in common than they thought. Like I saw Matt's in the chat. I don't know if he's still here, but Matt's been on as a former Bernie Sanders supporter who was out protesting for election integrity. That's not typically who you hear from by the mainstream press. It's people who talk about election reform, right? It's always like I can't even say it because we're on YouTube, but Trump and all this stuff, like, that's how you hear it. But there are lots of people that prior to Trump on the left were, very, who supported Bernie and saw how he was treated during the primaries and everything, that would totally understand where the Trump supporters were coming from in that regard. And I remember the lady who used to cut my hair in Seattle. By the way, I have not had my hair cut in one whole entire year. It's time to go get my hair cut. I literally only get my hair cut once a year now. But back in the day when I had to get my hair cut for my contract, I had a Bernie supporter hairstylist. And she was one of the only people I knew in Seattle who was not freaking out after the 2016 election, and was sort of understanding about how we got there, and like wasn't just like, oh my God, these people are nuts, and we're going to crazy town, because she was one of the people that saw through the Hillary Clinton campaign and didn't like her and saw how Bernie was treated. And I remember covering the protests in 2016, the inauguration protests, and there was a woman who said, I'm glad Trump won, because if he hadn't, I would have been out here protesting all by myself. I would have been protesting the election all by myself, because nobody would have been out here in Seattle protesting if Hillary Clinton won, and we still have the same problems. So it just, the stuff doesn't work anymore. The old labels don't work anymore. If somebody can help me coin the terms, I would really appreciate it someday. Like if you could help me figure out how to start defining it and how to talk about it. Because like right now, all I know I can say is the term populism, but it doesn't seem to work either. Left wing and right wing are attached to the same bird. Too many normies don't realize the illusion of choice. For the most part, DC is a uniparty. Yeah, I mean, I think that's totally true. And I don't think a lot of journalists quite understand that either. It's not really on their radar. Okay, so any other things? Let me just check over on locals and ROKFIN. Don't forget to go to my locals community, everybody. If you are not on locals, go to alisonmorrow.locals.com, because tomorrow, Saturday, we will be having our weekly editorial board meeting where we come up with story ideas for the following week. You give me feedback from the week before. You can talk about the liberal world order. You can do whatever you want. We have it with my horses. You can see my horses, which are typically lazy and add nothing to the conversation, but they're pretty to look at most of the time. So go to alisonmorrow.locals.com. And the chat over there is FBI does not work with a film unless they have final say. Rule days back to Hoover in the 1950s. Yeah, okay, so that's interesting. You know what? What would be a really cool would be sometime to do, I know Eric Hunley does it all the time, but like to talk a little bit about the role of Hollywood and the federal law enforcement agencies and and how all that works. Because you know who wrote me after Randy Olson was on, the guy who was like, the government needs a narrative officer, that whole interesting conversation. Steve with Slow News Day wrote me, does Randy realize he's basically he just made a case for the relationship between Hollywood and the CIA, and he just told you, basically, does he even know that he told you about that? So I invited Steve to come back on, maybe if Randy comes out, and then we can talk about all that. Whistleblowers got taken out hard. If they sent a letter, it means they've exhausted all private avenues. Yeah, this is with the White House Correspondents Association. I totally agree. The same thing happened, if we go back to my video that I was doing last year, over a year ago, when it was the complaining about having quote approval. They basically said flat out, we've tried to argue this in private. It hasn't worked, so we're going public with it. And it wasn't even like a story that was headlining in any, it really didn't make it in many, if any. I don't remember it being a headline anywhere that you had to do quote approval, other than that Politico like daily brief or weekly brief or whatever it is where they talk about it. So they had said that they had just exhausted all private avenues, and so they had to go public with it. And the same thing with the White House press corps talking about this issue of having a selective, incongruent determinations of who gets to go to the press conferences. Same thing. We've tried to talk to you guys about this in private, and like they say at the top, we once again respectfully request the Biden administration without exception. So they're like, we've already done this. Now we're going to do it publicly. We're going to send you a letter, and it's going to be public record now, right? Because this was sent in to a government, and well, allegedly you're supposed to be able to access documents that people send into the government. Anyway, so yeah, so is that a liberal world order? I guess it is. That's the liberal world order where only certain people get to go cover the president. And the other thing that I hate getting back even into this, because it was kind of dumb at the time, the whole Jim Acosta-Trump feud. And Jim Acosta made out big after that little match that they had where he lost his press pass and then he gained it back again. But everybody really freaked out about that. And I did a video way back when that happened. I should have pulled that up, because that was like true vintage Allison Morrow, like back when I wore my old librarian glasses and everything that were like tinted amber. And I used to use like a light that looked like one of those Revolutionary era fake flame lights. I would like put it up to my face, and that's what I was using as a light kit when I had like 300 subscribers, which I'll probably have again because YouTube keeps deleting my subscribers. So I'm on my way back to 300. So make sure you're subscribed. But I did a video back then when the whole Jim Acosta White House press pass hoopla happened. And I was like, I don't think he should have lost his press pass, but at the same time, I really don't care, because it's like, because this whole thing is all drama. Like, it's all drama, and the reporters who are doing the real investigative work, they're not complaining about. I mean, I'm sorry. I agree with these White House correspondents in their letter that there should not be just some kind of randomized picking. But then again, like, why aren't the average people allowed to go to the White House press conferences, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, the White House is picking who gets to go to the press conferences. They're just mad that they're being excluded now on terms that are not their own. But what if you all wanted to go to the White House press conferences? Do you think you'd be allowed? No. And would those reporters stick up for your rights to go to the White House press conference? No. I mean, there's obviously going to be a limit. They can't and I can understand for size and that kind of thing, but I haven't heard, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but have you heard about the White House offering, like, the golden ticket that you got with Willy Wonka to get a chocolate bar, or you got the golden ticket in the chocolate bar and then you got to go to his candy factory? Do they hand out golden tickets anymore with the White House? Like, can you go to the White House and ask President Biden a question? No. So this is the other thing too. I should have said this way earlier in the video. It also seems like journalists only complain when they're affected by the insanity, by sort of the move towards control and not liberal world order. They complain when they're the victims of it, or they feel victimized by it, but they don't stick up for the average person. Same thing with the censorship issues on platforms like YouTube. Like, they're totally fine when the government or, pressures these tech companies to go after the average person. And then they complain constantly about how the average person is just like derailing American thought, that people are crazy now because of these small YouTubers or even big YouTubers. But like, they have more power. Like, the more that the YouTubers have, like me, have more power behind them than MSNBC or Fox News Channel or CNN or whatever. It's so ridiculous, but they constantly focus on it. So the rules that they decide that they want to freak out about and try to push back on, it just feels like it's only when they start feeling uncomfortable, and they just don't mind when the government starts pushing back on citizens' rights if they're not affected. That's why I think a lot of them didn't really care about COVID. They just didn't think things were a story because they didn't think they were going to be affected by it. Okay, let me go back. There was a couple more that I was going to read. Media versus reporters. Media sales ads. Reporters look for the truth and report on it. Media sells ads. Okay, I think that's what that was supposed to say. Reporters look for the truth and report on it. Yeah, I mean, I get the distinction in what you're saying with the terminology and everything. I think the problem, let me just put it back up. At the end of the day, I think even though we were totally kept separate in newsrooms, like I never, the sales department was at the top and reporters were on the lower floor, and we were not really supposed to communicate. I've had people on who have told me stories about getting talked to about how, like, they're just not going to run a story because the sales department says you'll lose your biggest client. And so sometimes the line's a little bit blurry between what you would consider a journalist and a reporter. Now, there are people, I would say, who are still trying to do that job you're discussing in these newsrooms. The problem is, I think the question I asked myself, and eventually my answer was no, was, can I, now that I realize my blind spots, now I realize the direction I need to go in, can I do it within this system? And I did try to reformat my position. My bosses thought I was nuts. And so I had to leave. I couldn't continue doing it. And I think a lot of reporters with each other, when they go out together to bars and stuff, they complain constantly about how journalism is under attack and all these things for all kinds of reasons. But then they just go back and do it. They go back and do it tomorrow. And then they defend it when people call it fake news. It's like, well, you guys kind of said it was fake news. You're sort of used to it. The establishment versus the disenfranchised isn't much different from where left and right came from before the French Revolution, the literal seats in parliament. Well, that's interesting. I am not a Russian bot. Thank you. Let's see. I keep going back. I'm trying to find. Oh yeah, Allison. Trying to get Allison set up with Brett and Heather on the Dark Horse podcast. Yeah, I would really like that. I did send them an email. I sent Heather an email. We'll see if she sees it. I have not heard back from them yet. Thanks, Allison. Lynn, you lucky dog. Allison is awesome. Yeah, I'll save that and put that up on the wall. Thanks. Maybe someone can put a list of political manipulated terms double speak up on locals, and then we can do a group collab to come up with a definition for them. That's a good idea. I also have to start doing, everybody's been on locals. Another reason you should go to locals is because I've been asking for people to submit what their stereotypes are of corporate news, and I'll respond to all of them. Like, are reporters paid directly by pharmaceutical companies, that kind of thing. And so go over to AllisonMorrow.locals.com and subscribe so that you can become part of my editorial board and help me with the myth videos that we're going to start doing. Okay, well, this has been great. Let me check ROKFIN. Everybody over on ROKFIN, thank you. Biden probably hands those golden tickets to various senators' children. Oh, man. Lino, liberal in name only. Okay, that's good. This world order is very authoritarian. That doesn't fit any context of liberal. Corporate communists. Yeah, we have a lot of them. Socialism is another one. Hijacked word. Oh, yeah. Okay. Saying that socialism is a hijacked word. Liberal is from the same origin as librarian, the Latin word for libra, meaning book or freedom of choice. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Thanks for the tips on ROKFIN too. Thanks for the super chats. High elevation, everything gotta be good. Yes, anything that comes from high elevation. Okay, and then Sobi says, thanks, great show, banned and exiled from Twitter. Okay, good to have you here. Yeah, there are a lot of people that like Alex Berenson, I think, just put out something about how his lawsuit has taken another turn on suing Twitter over getting booted out. And I think, didn't Jordan Peterson just get booted from Twitter? So who does the producer like in 24? You mean who is our toddler going to vote for in 2024? I'll do a whole video. We should just do a whole short on that. Did you know? You guys probably hate me for this. I don't know if I've talked about this publicly, but I voted for her for president in 2020. We're gonna be like, that was the stupidest move ever, but I did, and I saved it so that you can see, because I'm one of those people that I was just done in 2020. So damn, missed it. What did you miss? You're here. You go back. You can go back. Wait, JP got kicked out of YouTube. No, he got kicked out of Twitter, I believe. Maybe it's a good thing that terms like liberal no longer have any useful meaning. Vote for the person, not for their label. Yeah, that's a pretty good point. Like it should be hard to define people, because sometimes people act overly simplified because they are trying to fit a particular category that's a safe category at the time, whatever the popular category is at the time. The last thing you want to be labeled right now is like MAGA. If you want to be accepted into society, but that was different 40 or 50 years ago. And, I think journalists are a huge part of the problem of getting us to a point where we hear a term and we think these specifics about it. And we are constantly trying to fit people into these categories, because that's how many of these articles or TV stories are written. Like, I don't know if you all remember, you probably don't, but what was it, like eight months ago or so? No, it wasn't 8 months ago. It was when Trump was still president, right? Yeah, because he got COVID. So there were all these reports like, okay, Trump got COVID. So will this change your mind about the vaccines? I think that was what people were talking about. Will this change your mind about the vaccines? And the way that they did the story, I remember showing one, was they were talking about like the people they were interviewing, and we talked about this tactic before, this man on the street tactic, which is so dumb. It's like, I mean, granted, we on YouTube go out and we'll sometimes like, get this person and that person or whatever. But the way that it's often framed when you watch corporate TV news, especially, is like, here's the story. Here's 3 people who basically said what we wanted them to say. We put it together and we act like this is a fair and equal representation of how Americans think. And so they were like looking for Trump supporters, like, are you going to get the vaccine? And all the people that they picked were just like, that's the mark of the beast. I ain't going to be swayed, whatever. Like, no scientific reasons because doesn't fit the category. It just doesn't fit the category that anyone would have a medical or scientific reason. And then, God forbid, if they did have one of those reasons and it was legitimate, the reporter would actually have to research that. And there's no time for that anyway. It doesn't fit the narrative, and they don't have time to do the research. So that's why they just throw in these stupid sound bites from people who say things that they cannot be fact checked. They just cannot be fact checked. Like, who can fact check if it's the mark of the beast? I can't. I know I cannot fact check that. So I don't know if you can, but like in sort of the next 2 hours, if someone said it's unfact checkable, so you can totally put it on because it's out of the realm. Now, if somebody made actual arguments against for medical and scientific reasons that you could document and you could fact check in the next couple of hours, that person can't be in the story because sorry, it doesn't fit. And also you just don't have time to even look into it, and you don't want to look into it. I mean, a lot of these sort of, we didn't have time and we had to get it done stuff. It's a BS excuse, because reporters take their time for the stuff that they really want to look into. If they feel like they really need to look into it, they'll take their time. A great example of this, and then I'm going to let everybody go, is back when I was a reporter and totally was completely asleep. And I've told this story before and even had the doctor on talking about this. The Department of Health sent out this press release about this doctor they said was experimenting on his patients. It was actually very similar to a lot of the things we hear now, or at least were hearing sort of at the height of the COVID pandemic related to early treatment. And, this doctor is doing this. Oh my God. And all the news reports. And even though like, if you actually looked into it, it really wasn't that big of a deal at all, but it was often displayed that way. So it was kind of treated similarly, he's experimenting on his patient. And we just ran with the press release from the Department of Health and stood outside the guy's office at like 10 o'clock at night and said, the Department of Health says he's experimenting on his patients. Well, we haven't gotten a comment. Why? Because we decided to do this story at 7 p.m. and his office was closed, but we had to get it done. Okay. Later, I eventually got an interview with that guy, and the story the Department of Health was saying was, it was from his standpoint, totally false. Okay. And even if you sort of bought some of what they were saying, they really left out a lot of information. And so we were not reporting the real like truth. We were just telling one side of the story. Why were we willing to tell one side of the story without the other? Because our bias was in the direction of the Department of Health. So here's how it works. If the Department of Health sends you a press release and you already kind of feel like they're the authority that's here to protect you, and they're not trying to mislead you, and they wouldn't lie and all that stuff, then you just repeat the press release. But I can assure you, if the situation were reversed and that doctor had called me or my assignment desk and said, the Department of Health is experimenting on patients, or if he had said the Department of Health is trying to shut me down, unfairly, they're investigating me unfairly, and they're going to kill my patients in the process or whatever, there is no way in a million years we would have just stood outside the Department of Health at 7 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night and just been like, this doctor says this. Can you believe it? But we haven't gotten a statement from the Department of Health yet. We haven't heard from, no way. I mean, we may have heard from that guy and then said, we need time to investigate this. But why would we hold that information to the standard of we need to look into it? Whereas the Department of Health, we would just repeat the press release with no investigation. Why would we do that? I mean, that kind of stuff happens all the time. So you will take time if it's something where like, I really need to look into this. So the idea that like, we're just not going to take time. Well, it's because you just think that whatever information you're going to put out there in the next 10 minutes is not damaging enough for you to look into. And you just either are already, I don't know, ideologically aligned with the information or with the speaker of the information, and you just trust them, and because like I said, or you feel like the repercussions of sharing information that would be antagonistic to that would have graver repercussions for you. The repercussions would be graver. So like for the doctor, for instance, case that I was just describing, if we ran with his story without investigating and checking with the Department of Health, I think we would assume the Department of Health would just come after us big time. And we'd be like, oh God, we just, so we have to get the records. We have to see what the Department of Health is really doing behind the scenes. Whereas we were probably just not really scared of the repercussions of one person. So we just defame the person and move on. And how many times have you seen that happen? It happens all the time. And like I said, it comes from different places. My dad's in the chat. Website said lower taxes. Personally, his answer to Social Security was to extend the Social Security tax. I'm guessing I'm missing the conversation that you guys are talking about. Carrie, would love to hear more from the producer. She's outside with her dad right now, but maybe we'll do a producer live stream. She actually says quite a few words now. She says, I'm awesome, which is really funny. I'm awesome and bossy. I got her to start saying I'm bossy because we have this like slip and slide for her now. And she'll go, mommy in. She's like, you have to get in like the water, the slip and slide. And so I'm like, are you bossy? She goes, no. And I go, say I'm bossy. She goes, I'm bossy. So she's bossy. Yeah. She's a funny kid. She's she's definitely got a personality where she thinks she runs the show, and the words are helping us see that very clearly. The Department of Health should not be allowed to send out any press releases. Any information the department has should be readily available on its website to any medical reporter. Well, what if they did that and they sent out the press release so everybody saw it? That's usually how they're supposed to work. Put it like media releases, or not maybe supposed to, but typically you should find them somewhere. Okay. Why investigate when the Congress votes on bills without reading them? It's the new liberal order. Yeah. Actually, that's a really great point. I did a video on that. I don't know how long ago it was, a year or so ago, when people were complaining on both the left and the right that they were not able to read the budget, like basically go through the budget before they had to vote on it. And that's exactly how the news works. It's just like, sorry, you just got to get it done. I have no idea what's in this. I'm just going to put it on TV. And you know what? I actually like the voting on the bills that you don't even know what you're voting on. That bothers me. It does. But I think that's wrong. But when it comes to the news, what really bothers me is not so much that they do that, though they shouldn't. It's that they claim that they're the authorities when they don't really know what they're talking about. Like, I did not, much of my career, I barely scratched the surface of what I was reporting on. A lot of the times, if I was covering something complex, I was barely scratching the surface, but we were presenting ourselves as authorities. What really was like my crisis of conscience in news media was that I was finally becoming competent enough in what I was covering that I could start seeing what my blind spots were. And I started realizing that I was complicit in the system where I was presenting myself as an authority when I barely knew what I was talking about. And then that was having effects on the community, how not just how they related to each other, but public policy, all kinds of things. And if they would have let me say, hi, I'm Alice, and I had 2 hours today to do this story, so I barely know what I'm talking about, didn't get to read that Senate report, but here's what I do know. If I could have said that, then at least I was honest with people. But that's not how it is. They start every newscast with like, welcome to the 5 o'clock news. We are the most trusted, most accurate source of news in Seattle, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, they throw these words like, we're accurate, we're trustworthy, we're all these things. It's like, no, we barely know what we're talking about. In fact, we don't know what we're talking about in a lot of cases. We would just say that up front. I'd be a lot more, I would be a lot more, at peace with what I was doing, but I couldn't keep presenting myself as the expert. Ivory Hecker got banned for talking about doctors and COVID. From where? Twitter or YouTube? Yeah, it's a battle, guys. I mean, I don't know what's happening with my channel. I may just suck at vlogging, or I think I hear the producer. Do you hear that? Do you hear mommy? Hang on. Maybe she wants Lily, you want to come say hi? Do you hear that? If you can hear it, say yes in the chat. Hang on. And I can. Okay, hang on. I fought a dude with hairy legs. Okay. I don't know what that means. Hang on 1 second. She'll say hi and then we'll wrap it up. Hang on. Hang on. Okay, come here. You want to say hi? Hi. Okay. All right. Then we're going to say, you got to say like, share, and subscribe. Okay. Okay. Can you say like, share, and subscribe? How do you say like, share, and subscribe? Can you say like? Can you say share? Share? Can you say share?
Yeah.
Share and subscribe.
Right.
Okay. You heard it here first. Like, share, and subscribe. Okay. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend. Happy 4th of July.